Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find them interesting too. So really this week I'm back at the beginning. Over a year ago now, I did a video on a whim about a place that I have always loved and I've always been very interested in, and that is the back-to-back houses here in Birmingham. Now that video, thank you, went viral. Wasn't expecting it. I'd been toddling along doing uploads and then suddenly this video hit the stratosphere. About everyone was very interested, and that really marked the beginning of my YouTube journey when I thought I can do this. This is somewhere where I can share my passions, build a community and bring people together that are interested in the same thing as me. So I'm back here today. It's going to be a guided tour again, so it's going to be hard to get the shots, but what I want to do today is, rather than show you the back-to-backs, you can go to my original video for the tour. I want to talk about the people who lived here, who actually lived in these houses. What were they doing? Why were they here? Because at the moment there is an exhibition at the back-to-backs of photographs from people who lived in slum housing within Birmingham. And I want to kind of bring all that together and talk to you not only about the back-to-back houses that are very fascinating, but also highlight the people who lived here and their lives. So shall we go? It's going to take a while to pull together this one, but I think we can make it a good one. Let's go. So welcome to Court 15 in Birmingham, my home city. These are the last surviving examples of back-to-back housing in the city of Birmingham, and the last surviving example of a court back-to-back house. However, there are still back-to-back homes lived in today elsewhere in other industrial cities such as Leeds. This court of houses has been carefully restored by the National Trust. Back-to-back houses like this were built right across industrial Britain: Leeds, Manchester, Nottingham, Liverpool, but nowhere had more than Birmingham. By the 1870s, over 50,000 back-to-back homes packed people into the city. They were built fast and cheap, and they were built to squeeze as many workers as they could into these homes to power the factories and foundries. Court 15, as I said, is the last one standing, and behind every wall and every doorway there's a story. So let's go back to 1840, and it's difficult to imagine that the first families here didn't move into an overcrowded city environment. From this house you would have seen fields overlooking the city with the Bullring Market in the distance. New houses and industry were building up quickly around the area. However, for the first people who lived here, it was still pretty countrified. Number 50 was home to the Levy family. They were Jewish migrants, possibly from Eastern Europe. Dad was a watch hand maker, a highly skilled trade done from home. Mum and the 4 children who lived here all lived in these 3 rooms, one up, one down and one attic. There was no running water, no indoor toilet. Water came from a communal pump across the street initially, but this was later moved inside the courtyard for the residents. To gain the water that you needed, you queued up with a pail or a bucket, and the family's children were usually sent to do the job. The Levys lived close to the city's Hebrew school, which was opened in 1843 just streets away. So their children did have access to education and a sense of their identity. It's probably hard to imagine, because what we know about later residents of the back-to-back houses, that they lived a terribly poor life. But life for the Levys here was quite comfortable, as the building was still relatively new and the surrounding area, although beginning to become built up, still allowed fresh air. By 1870, however, Court 15 was bursting at the seams. The Oldfield family lived here then, 11 members in total. Dad made glass eyes. He crafted eyes out of glass for dolls and also for people. It was a proper cottage industry that was done right here in the houses or in the yard during better weather. He had a top floor workshop that allowed more light to come in to get the work done. Around 1870, census records show that there were lots of children here, helping out, going out to work. There were also apprentices sleeping on floors, lodgers, but some of the people here did go on to have careers. There was one lady living here in the 1870s who went on later to become a school teacher. This was quite something for a girl from a house with no bathroom and barely any light. There was a wash house here shared by the whole court, and this was used right up until the 1970s. There would be a tin bath in front of the fire for cleaning yourself, a washboard and a mangle for the clothes. Bath night was once a week if you were lucky, and in winter you bathed in your vest, which may have been lined with some kind of animal fat to keep in the heat. The fire had to be kept going with wood from anywhere. If you ask anyone who lived in these houses, the first thing they'd probably say is that there was a proper community here. Proper neighbours, people looked after each other, shared sugar, coal or a cup of tea. The kids would play together, maybe playing marbles or football in the courtyard. And if someone was ill or down on their luck, your next door neighbour would bring you food. People shared what they had, and they also had plenty of pride. With people living cheek by jowl, of course, not everybody got along. There are tales of women fighting in the courtyards, real fisticuffs, and then men coming home late at night drunk as a skunk after spending their weekly wage, waking the entire neighbourhood with their drunken singing. I always imagine a microcosm of human life in each one of these courts, with its own sights, characters, sounds and smells. Moving forward to the 1930s, the Mitchell family had lived in Court 15 since the 1830s, nearly 100 years, 4 generations of locksmiths and bell hangers. They ran their workshop from the courtyard and lived above the shop. Tom Mitchell was born in this court in 1841 and he died there in 1913, aged 72. His story from humble beginnings to skilled tradesman shows how these cramped homes still made long-term roots. In the 1930s they now had electricity and even installed a makeshift bathroom in one of the bedrooms. That was a real luxury in these houses and the neighbours would have come round to have a look. By the 1930s though, most similar courts in the area still had no running water, and the same old toilets in the courtyard that had now been changed from a bucket under a hole in a plank of wood, but now actually had a flush. In winter you'd brave the freezing dark with a candle, and in summer the stench would have been overwhelming. One of the questions that came up over and over again in my last video was who came and collected the waste. Well, this was the job of the night soilman. Waste would be collected in the buckets underneath the toilets and then moved by somebody brave into larger barrels that sat waiting in the court for collection. I can't even imagine what the smell and the flies here would have been like, but public health did improve with the introduction of flushing toilets. But of course you still had to share and wait your turn, and forums about Birmingham tell many tales about begging to take a seat during a moment of urgency when a neighbour was enjoying a relaxing moment in one of the cubicles, maybe reading the paper. Living in a back-to-back house was, to our modern eyes, tough. 1 brick thick walls meant freezing winters and roasting summers. You would have heard every cough, every baby crying and every couple arguing and doing other things. This was communal living in its real form. The toilets, of course, were cold and dark. One woman remembers spiders on the seats. Kids carried the gazunda, the Brummie term for a chamber pot because it goes under the bed, out each morning to clear the waste. Cleanliness, however, was a huge badge of honour in these houses, and most of the residents kept their homes spotless. Some families lined the outhouse, for example, with carpet and scrubbed it weekly. They made their homes respectable. Water was available, but one standpipe in the yard would serve 50 to 60 people. Sometimes they broke, and in winter they would freeze. But then you would simply fetch buckets from other courts or use rain barrels. Laundry day was usually Monday and a real event in the court. Big boiling coppers in the wash house with steam pouring out of the windows. The women would swap stories while scrubbing shirts and bedding, smells of carbolic soap, coal smoke and cabbage in the air. The backtobacks, of course, saw their share of hardship. Disease spread fast in these close quarters. Diphtheria, typhoid, TB, and children often died young. In the census records, there are several children that died in infanthood within this courtyard. In the 1890s, infant mortality in Birmingham was among the worst in the country. In 1 year, over 3,000 babies died before their first birthday. In 1886, the Birmingham Mail reported about housing such as this. We discover a wretched-looking woman and 2 children shivering before us. The fireplace is empty. The shelves are empty too, and the plaster is crumbling from the walls. The windows are smashed and there's a gaping hole in the front door, and only one piece of furniture is a table. Just about everything can be sold has been sold to scrape together money for food. My husband is a brass caster, says the woman. For the last 3 months, he's not made a penny at his trade. He expects a job again before Christmas, and if he gets on, we shall be all right again. By the 1970s, most of the back-to-back houses had been demolished across Birmingham. They were classed as slums, and rightly so. Most families had been rehomed into council flats or tower blocks, but Court 15 held on. Just. And that, in part, is due to an amazing man, George Saunders. George came from St Kitts, part of the Windrush generation. He set up his tailor shop at 55 Her Street in the early 1970s. He worked from the front room, measuring, cutting and sewing suits for the community. He worked with everybody, theatre staff, locals, everyday brummies. His suits were really popular with the mods, known for their excellent quality, and he even made uniforms for the Royal Guard. George was a real craftsperson and proud of his work. He lived upstairs and worked downstairs right up until 2002, and that's when the court was under threat of demolition. George campaigned to save it. He spoke to the local council and to the National Trust. He said, "This isn't just a building, this is a life." And thanks to him, the court was preserved. Today, when you walk into his old shop, you still hear his voice on the audio guide. He's still there, all around. I love coming to the back-to-back houses because as a social historian, I feel like some of social history's biggest heroes lived in houses like this. Mothers raising 9 kids on no wage, granddads passing down trades, young ones climbing out, getting an education, going to college, becoming teachers, nurses, engineers. They are our ancestors, they are Birmingham, they are the people that made a lot of us in the United Kingdom, and I am so proud of them. Across the United Kingdom, courts and back-to-back houses like this disappeared. And good riddance, many people thought. They were replaced with estates and flats. Some of it, of course, was progress. You'd have had an indoor bathroom, a garden. But many people thought something was lost too. That closeness and that shared hardship and community. A sense of us. Many detested their new lives in their new tower block or council homes, and they missed that sense of community. Many, however, of course, relished it, and they looked back on these old courts with a sense of good riddance. But as always, you can't please everybody. On that note, I am going to leave you with a memory that I found on the Birmingham History Forum. It said, "I lived in a back-to-back house in the 1960s, not long before they were all demolished. We didn't know we were poor. We loved the brew house. It was our den, and we would sit with a candle on telling ghost stories, the scarier the better. Our mum did everything she could to keep the place clean and the bugs at bay. I can remember the bugs coming through to ours if the neighbour had fumigated their place. And Mum spent ages washing our clothes on boil and scrubbing the walls. It was a never-ending battle. I still remember the smell of fried breakfast wafting through on a Saturday morning, as we only ever got jam and toast, and my mouth watering. Our mum was really sad when we moved to our new council flat. I miss my friends, and I think she did too. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. There are over 100 videos to binge now, and I appreciate every single one of you. As always, I am really looking forward to the comments on this one. People who take their time to share their own lived experiences, who maybe don't realise it, but you are creating a living history resource. And how lucky am I to be the curator of such magnificent memories, and you for being able to read them. As always, thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next one. See you, Bab. Ta-ra a bit. Or to the non-Brummies, see you later.